So today we're switching over to Illustrator. Photoshop and Illustrator, as far as the tools go, there's some similarities and some of the terms are the same and everything. Only remember that Illustrator is vector, which means that it has an anchor or a point, whichever you want to call it, and a path to another anchor or point. Point is basically a math term, so Illustrator calls them anchors. And so that's what we'll call it here. So did anybody have any lingering questions about Photoshop that we should address first? Y'all all pretty good? Okay, very good. It seemed like all of you were doing really well. I really feel confident that you'll do really good in this software too. So today we're going to get familiar with some of the tools. We're going to also get familiar with some of the shortcuts that are going to help you. And basically, we're just going to be doing shapes and Pathfinder. And I know that Pathfinder means nothing. It's like maybe finding a path. Well, it's got kind of a different function. So we'll tackle that when we get there. Okay, let me escape this and minimize it. And then I'm going to open up the Intro to Illustrator lecture file, which is right here. So you can follow along with me. You don't have to necessarily do all the things, but I'm going to demonstrate some stuff and I'll kind of walk around a little bit to make sure everybody's pretty well getting it. So before I get started on this, let's open another screen. Let me see if I can get this to. I want to make sure that I'm sharing the right screen too, because I am still trying to record these things. If I can get this to expand a little bit. Share. Okay, I want to share that one. Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure I was sharing it correctly. So I've instead of opening this up first, I think I'm just going to go right to the welcome page. This is just like, can all of y'all see that, or do I need to change that to a lighter color? Is that kind of hard to see? Yeah, no? Do you like the white screen better? I have no preference. Y'all go ahead and it's fine the way it is? Okay. Well, this is the welcome screen in Illustrator. It's pretty much the same as Photoshop was. You can make a new file, you can open an old file. This shows you where all of your recent work was and all of that kind of stuff. So let's start out by making a new file. So you'll know how to do that whenever you start working on some of your projects. So click New File. And just like Photoshop, you've got some choices here. The recent things, the sizes that you made are here, or you can go up here where there are web and print and branding and a few like that. So we're just going to do print for now because that's what I like. And so let me see if I can move this little guy here because I don't know if y'all can see all my stuff here. Yeah, it looks like it. Let me bring this down just a little bit. Okay. So this is going to be working in points. So you do have a choice in this window to change it to something else. So rather than work in points for the size of an entire page, let's go to inches because we're all familiar with inches and it's just easier to get started there. This is how wide it's going to be, and this is how high it's going to be. And you can see that the orientation corresponds with that little image right there. That means that it is in a portrait view. Whenever you deal with printers, they always say the width first. So if you were to say, I want an 8.5 by 11, but you really wanted the other way around, you wanted something that was 11 inches wide and 8.5 inches tall, they will make it the other way. They'll go with 8.5 as being the width. So just remember that little quirk or whatever that they have. And know that whatever you say, the first number is going to be how wide it is. And it corresponds with the way this works too. Okay, so you can switch them back and forth. Um, this is a little bit different than Photoshop. Remember, we talked about Photoshop. I keep saying the wrong words. We talked about Photoshop only having one page that you open a file and you've got all the layers you want. You can make 100 layers, but you can only have one page. So if you're doing something that requires a whole bunch of pages, you wouldn't want to use Photoshop because you would have in the Photoshop world, if you did something that had to have multiple pages, you would have that many files. You wouldn't have it all compressed into one place. Illustrator, on the other hand, has the ability to make, they call them art boards. I call them pages. It's just basically the same thing, but you can actually make more. You can either count up with pushing that little arrow and make it big, or you can just swipe it and type in the number that you want. Okay, so speaking of print, here is another concept that we talked about briefly on that first day, and it's that word that's called bleed. Do any of y'all remember what bleed is? I see some hands. What would you like to say? I think I know what you, yeah, I think I know exactly what you mean. The bleed is exactly that. You have a page that's like this, but if you want to have color or a photograph or something that covers entirely the whole page, if you were to just go to the edge, when the printer cuts it off with their big guillotine cutters, they could very well have a little bit of a slip or something could be off just the slightest hair, and you'll get a little bit of white on the edge, and that looks like a mistake, and most of the time it is. So you want to put extra on that page so that whenever they cut, it's going to have plenty of room so that even if it does wiggle just the slightest bit, it's going to have the color instead of a white streak there. Okay. Sorry if I over-explain things, but sometimes I just want to refresh our memory. So bleed is set right here. This is something that Photoshop didn't have, because of Photoshop, it's like the edge of the image was it. You could make the image larger, or you could make the page larger, but or the image larger, but you didn't set a bleed that you know is going to be cut off. So here we have the bleed. This little chain and then broken chain means that you can either set it, if you're wanting to set it all the same exact bleed size, you would have the chain so you don't have to go into every window. So in the industry, for just printing, now for bigger things, it varies, but you should always ask if you're doing a banner, they're going to want a larger bleed. So you just have to ask the printer, what bleed do you require? But if you're just printing a regular page in a regular book, it's 1/8 of an inch. And I should get all of you copies of, I've got a little thing, I don't have it on this computer, but I've got a little square thing that converts fractions into decimals, because in graphic art, you're going to be doing a lot of those conversions. So I am going to, like, for instance, you can see right here on our size, it's not 8 and then a half, with the number, it's 8.5. So you're going to need to know those decimals, because that's how the computer is, that's how the software is set up. So 1/8 of an inch, I'll just write this down. I feel like writing on the board today. It's 1/8 of an inch. And the way we write that in Illustrator or any of the programs, it's 0.125. That's the decimal of 1/8 of an inch. How many knew that? Do y'all use decimals a lot? Nobody? Okay. So 0.125 is 1/8 of an inch. And since I have the chain there, as soon as oops, I goofed up. I hit the return, and so it took everything and opened up and I wasn't ready for that. So let me get back to, sorry, I'm halfway asleep. Okay, so all the stuff is still set up. So whenever I touched the return key, which I should have just clicked somewhere else and it would have filled it in. But you can see I filled it in on one spot and it automatically filled in the other. If you want to have different bleeds on different sides, all you have to do is just unclick this. Okay, moving down. CMYK is what you use in printing. So for right now, I'm going to leave it at CMYK because I'm familiar with it. We're going to have a whole class devoted on color modes and color everything. We're going to talk about color in some depth, but you can change this to RGB. I'm sure that all of you are more familiar with RGB than you are CMYK because everything on the computer screen, everything on your watch, your phone, your TV, all of those things are in RGB. They're all RGB color because RGB is a light-based color. And CMYK is an ink or a pigment-based color system. So I'm going to leave it at CMYK. And now I've talked a lot about raster is Photoshop, vector is Illustrator, except for one thing. You can actually make some shadows and some feathery edges and stuff like that in Illustrator. And in that case, it's going to be raster. So what I always do when I'm setting up a new file, if I'm thinking I might use some of those effects, I go ahead and make it a 300 pixels per inch selection. If you know you're going to be putting this on the web and it's never going to be anywhere else, you can always change it. But I have a rule, and really it's a rule. It's a scientific rule. You can always save down. You can always make 372 really easy, but you can't take a 72 and make it 300. So it's better to start at a higher resolution and then down save if you need to. Does that make sense? Yeah, kind of like a measure twice and cut once kind of concept. Okay, so I'm going to leave that at default. More settings. Let's look at that for a second. Okay, so it's got all the same stuff here. Oh yeah, it's got one more thing that we didn't have on that other view. It shows how we can change the way that our artboards are laid out. We can make it go left, right, and go down like this zigzag like that. Or we can go a different direction, or we can make them all in a row, or we can make them all go down. And I'm just going to choose this one, arrange by row, and then create the document. And now you've got a 4 artboard Illustrator file. Okay, yes.
It's not letting me find the
Okay. Oh, you've only got one artboard. So go ahead and move that up to more than one. Yeah, it doesn't matter how many at this point. Okay. Anybody else? Yep, I see all of you have got it. Are you having some troubles?
Computer froze for a little bit, so I'm just waiting on it.
Yeah, they do that. You may have to restart Illustrator. Okay, so that's pretty much all it is to make a new file. And like I said before, the thing about Photoshop is that you open a photograph. You've got a full page. You've got no white space in most cases showing. So you don't have anything, you don't feel like you're going to have to start from scratch. You don't have to get on there and use your brush to make the photograph because it's already there. Illustrator, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite. You are adding things to it. So you have to, it's sort of that white page thing, like if you're about to write a report for your English class, write a research paper, and you have to write 10 pages and it's due tomorrow and you're staring at that blank page. There's something intimidating about that. But I don't want you to feel intimidated because we're going to learn how to fill that page up really fast. Okay. So has everybody downloaded the files from Google Drive? You did? Okay. Does that help me having them up so that y'all can get them downloaded the day before? I didn't know if that was going to help, but I should have them up anyway. So anyway, I did that. So are you still having trouble with, oh, you had to go from back to square one. I'm so sorry. All right, so I think while I'm waiting for her to get back on the online, I'm going to go ahead and take um take roll. I don't know if y'all look at your grades real often. Y'all, is that something y'all do on a regular basis? Well, you'll notice that I put a January lab exercise tab and I put in the where you had actually been in class. If you feel like that you were in class more than what I put in there, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head what the point count was, but if you missed a day, there was one, you have one less uh, amount. Anyway, if you feel like it's too low, let me know. I wouldn't worry about it too much because all of you are coming so well. I mean, you're attending so well that I don't think anybody's going to have a problem. But I'm going to go ahead and do roll now. Ryan, Sarah, I'm beginning to know your names, Daniel. No, Daniel. All right, Charlie, Trevor. No, Trevor. Caroline. Okay. And I see Matt's here. Tessa. No, Tessa. Lindsay. Emma. Hunter. And Bailey. All right. I know that's kind of elementary and everything, but it's just a way that I can keep up with who's doing the exercises and who's not. Okay. So are you back online? Okay, good. So the file that I'm going to open up now is not one that you're going to have to complete. This is just kind of some tools, but you can do the exercises along with me. And it's called Intro to Illustrator _lecture. Okay. So before I get started, let me go up to, oops, there we go. I don't know if I'm going to, oh, what am I doing here? Audio. Yep, I'm still getting audio. This is getting a little confusing for me. I don't know if any of you are really going to, there we go. I don't know if any of you are going to really get any good out of having this available to you, but I'm going to keep on for a while. Okay, so first thing we need to do is go to Window and go to Workspace. And you've got a whole lot of different choices here. And as you get more skilled in Illustrator, you might choose layout or painting or printing or typography or something like that. And that's fine. But for now, since we're just beginning, I'm going to take us to Essentials. And I may have done something, I am sure I have done some things since I said Essentials the last time. So I'm going to go down and say Reset Essentials. And y'all can do that too. You can say reset instead of just Essentials. So I clicked that. And so my screen did change quite a bit. All righty. Are you having some troubles? Are you having some troubles?
She's just running me through it again.
Oh, thank you for doing that. That's fine. I'll let you go back to doing that. I don't mind you helping each other. As a matter of fact, sometimes that's more helpful than having me because, y'all speak your language a lot better than I speak. I speak like 1960s and 70s language. So y'all are speaking the current language. So I'm not worried a bit about you helping each other. I think it's really good because sometimes when you explain something to somebody else, it reinforces it into your mind too. So I am good with that. Okay. Now I forgot oh yeah, I'm telling you how to set your windows. So the first thing we do is we reset the essentials. That way all of our screens will basically look the same. The next thing we need to do is go back to Window and go to Control. Remember in Photoshop, we had that control panel at the top that would change according to the tool that we had selected? Well, this has that too. Photoshop, though, it was basically a default. Here you have to go and ask, may I have the control bar, please? So just go down to, in Window, go to Control, and it will pop that up there. And that saves a lot of time. The reason I'm really emphasizing this is because some of the tools that you might have to dig through the menus to find will be right there. So it'll help you work faster, because if you're having to dig through menus and panels and search, it makes it doubly hard. And I want to make it as easy for you as I possibly can. Okay, the final thing that we need to do before we get started is go to toolbars. And you'll notice that basic is checked. That's the default for essentials. Now we want the advanced toolbar because there are some things that don't show up on the basic one that I want to show you. So I would always change this to advanced. Okay, so you see it pops into a two-layer thing, two-column, because it did have one single column because there really wasn't that much on it. But now we've got lots more tools showing. Okay, so that's pretty much the entire thing that we need to do with our windows. So if you remember, you have to, of course, select something. And so I'm clicking on the first page, and I'm going to say Command 0. And that brings it up so that it's centered in my screen so that it's a lot bigger. Don't ever work on something and have it so far away from you, you really can't even see it. I'm going to see if I can move this up a bit. It will not let me move it for some reason. There we go. I just want to move it up a little bit. So the first thing that I want to tell you about Illustrator and the images that you'll be able to create with it, I'm going to start with just a box. And I'm going to make this, well, I think black is okay. I'm just going to make it a really big stroke. And I'll explain all these things I'm doing in a minute. Okay, so the way that you build things in Illustrator, you have a shape, and the solid, let me get my little pointer, if it will work today. This shape right here, this square, tells you what color the fill is. This is the solid one is called fill. Yes. I can't.
It's like it won't let her change it to the row format.
Oh, okay. Sure. Can I borrow your mouse? Okay, so you've got, I'm just going to create document. Okay. So right now, let me see if I can make that. Oops, I'm making it bigger. Okay. So we need to go to Window. And did you do the workspace? Yes, you did. Okay, so the next one is Control bar. Just remember, Control is at the top.
Okay.
And then the next thing we need to do is Toolbars, which is right here. And we need to go to an advanced tool. If I can, well, I just chose the wrong thing here. Control, I turned off the control bar. So you need to go over to the advanced. And there you go.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. If you need to find something, it's always under the window. That's kind of my mantra. Yes. Say again?
Oh, you made the little rectangle. Okay.
Oh, I just went over to this rectangle shape right here. Yeah, I was just going to show, I just wanted to show the parts. We'll get to the shapes and stuff here in a second. Okay. So back to what I was saying, this is called a fill. In Photoshop, it was foreground and background. Now we're getting some different terms for these little boxes. So it also has a little arrow thing, so you can switch them back and forth. So right now I've got a white fill and a black stroke. If I click on that little arrow, it switches it. So that now the fill is black and the stroke is white. Okay. Let me switch that back. I'm going to put a different fill in there so that it's not the same color as the page. I'm going to get a little closer to this. So the first tool on the top left is called a selection tool. And the select in Photoshop, we had a move tool, and that was the only one that we used that had anything to do with moving things around. Well, this selection tool is basically the same. If you have it selected and you select a shape, you activate the shape. You can always tell when something's active because it has all these dots and extra lines and stuff like that, and then one right in the center. So whenever you choose the selection tool, which is this one, you have this look. And let me show you what a selection tool will do. Okay, if I select here, I can make it smaller. I can make it not so tall, and I can move it. And so that's what the selection tool does. There's also something else that the selection tool does. You'll notice in each corner, there's kind of a white dot with the, I mean, it looks like an O is what it looks like. So in every corner, when you're using the selection tool, there'll be one of those. And what those do is if you hover over it and click and drag, it makes the corners rounded to the point of being a circle. So, and the really beautiful thing is you can go back and forth as many times as you want to. You can unselect it, and when you activate it, you can fix it again. So it's one of those things that you can go back and forth. You can, it's not like in stone when you do it. Okay. So the next tool right next to it is the direct selection tool. Yeah, we've got two selection tools. Gets a little confusing. Sometimes I say, I'll just say the white one or the black one. Anyway, the selection tool is that one that's on the right. So when you select it, you notice that it changes. When you have the selection tool, it has all those dots in the center and everything. You hit the direct selection tool, and now we only have the ones in the corners, and they're not lit up because they're not active. The whole thing is active, but you have to activate each corner, each anchor. That is an anchor right there. If you hover over it, it's going to say anchor. Okay. So it also has those corner deals, just like the other one did. So if you come over and pull, it's still going to do exactly the same thing. Here's the difference. If you click and drag, you notice that this corner looks different than all these others. That means that that's active, and these are going to stay where they are. So let me show you with the corner deal. You can make just one corner change, and you can activate another by selecting it. Okay, makes sense? So that's one difference of the direct selection tool. Here's another difference of the direct selection tool, and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. You select your tool that's selected. I mean, you select your tool, and you can take that anchor, and you can make it go anywhere you want it to go. You can make it into a trapezoid, some kind of weird something or other. And you can move it if you click in the middle, but if you just select, you're going to be moving one anchor point. So that's how you can make some really different shapes when you're drawing stuff. You can start out with just a nice geometric shape, and then like you can elongate it, or you can change the length of one side of it. You can manipulate it any way you want to. So that's the difference between the selection tool, which is the plain one, the vanilla one, and then the direct selection tool, which is the one that's spicy and you can move things more. Okay. So any questions about the selection tools? All right. Some of these I'm just going to go over really quickly. This is a lasso tool, just like we had in Photoshop. So you can actually draw around a shape if you don't want to select, if it's kind of in a tight space. Let's say that this was in a tight space. You could select it without selecting all the stuff around it. And then you've got it selected. Okay. Now, Illustrator is mainly about drawing. I'm going to delete that. So Illustrator, like I said, is mainly about drawing. So we have pen tools, we have pencil tools, and we have paint brushes. So I'm going to show all of those to you here in a row. This is called the pen tool that I have hovered over right now. And I've got it selected. It's got to be, whenever you have something selected, it's darker than the rest of them. Okay, so underneath that pen tool, we have 3 different things. And let me show you something really neat about these little tools. Because you've got so many tools underneath each other, instead of having to go back and select another and then select another, you might be when you're in the throes of illustrating something, you might not want to keep going back and forth because you're going to be using one tool, then using the next tool, and it's all kind of blurred. So what you can do is see how this looks. It's got all the tools here, but then it's got this thing right here that has a little triangle on it right here. You can click this and lo and behold, you've got a little traveling toolbar. So now you can take it over to where you're working and you can use this bar and make something. So the selection that I have is just the plain old pen tool. So you can do a whole lot of different things with this. You can, you go, let me back up. Okay, you click and make an anchor. Not clicking, not holding the click, you just drag it over in a different place that you want to make another anchor. You click again and let go. And then you click and let go. So your anchor is making the shape. Now, if you click and hold it and pull, you make a curve. Okay, so that means that you can make all kinds of shapes with the pen tool. I use the pen tool a great deal. It's one of my favorite tools. So just kind of click around and then do one where you click and hold and pull, and those things that are coming out of the anchor, those are called handles. And with the handles and the selection tool, go back up to the selection tool, you can click it, activate it, and then you can just go to town. You can make this any shape you want it. It just goes wherever you tell it to go. Okay. Has everybody kind of used the pen tool to do that a couple of times? It's a really simple tool. I mean, sometimes it's a little frustrating because it does exactly what you tell it to, and that's the problem with it. But that's also the beauty of it. Okay, the next tool is a pen with a plus. So just like it looks like, it adds another point, another anchor on the line. Let me get closer and do that again. Okay, so I just click along the path, and whenever you have it selected, it says path. It lets you know that you have got it selected. And so you can click and make another point so that you can take your direct selection tool and you can start manipulating it and making it a house or whatever you want to do. Okay, so that's adding points. The next one then, of course, would seem that since it has a minus, it takes away points. So you can go to any of these points and get rid of them. Just click on the point and it goes away like it was never there. Okay, does that all make sense? All righty. So this last tool, they call it a anchor point tool. I call it my flying V because it is a flying V. You could call it whatever you want to, but that is a mouthful. Anchor point tool. Okay, so what this does when you select it, let's say that you've got something that has a curve to it and you don't want it. You've got this curvy anchor point and you want it to be straight, just a straight geometric, no curve. So you hover over it, select the anchor, click on it, and it changes it. So that now you don't have that curve anymore. You've taken your flying V and you've changed it back into a really sharp point. Does that make sense? Okay. And the other side of the coin of this particular tool is you can select a point that has no curve and click and drag. Whoops, I always go the wrong direction, and make it back into a curve. So the bottom line is you can use the pen tool and make it anything you want. And then you can change it to anything else you want, and then anything else you want. It's totally editable. In Photoshop, some things you do are permanent. The only way you can undo it is just go back in time and undo it. But if you happen to accidentally hit save or something, then it's pretty much locked in Photoshop. But in Illustrator, it's editable always editable. So that's why I like Illustrator so much. Okay, let me back off a little bit. And I saw that we had another person come in, so tell me your name again. Daniel. All right. I'll help you catch up in a minute. We're going to have an exercise to do, so just go ahead and follow along, and I'll catch you up in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of these shapes that I've been building. Okay, this next tool, oh, and by the way, of course, just like in Photoshop, whatever tool you used last is the one that's going to be on top on your toolbar. So if you can't find something, look for it underneath and you can see it. Okay, this other tool is something that they've added, and I've really never used it very much because I didn't really want to. But what it does is you click and you can click, and then the third anchor that you're starting to make will make it curve. So if you don't feel good about your skills to make something have a nice curve, you are more than welcome to use this tool. I find it to be a little bit, I like to be in control. I don't like it doing it for me. So that tool is not one of my favorites. But if you should decide that you want to use it, who am I to tell you not to do it? Another way you can draw, because with a pen, you have to have anchors and then anchors and anchors, and then you have to come back up here and close the path. And you get that little zero, just like we did with the lasso tool and all of those things in Photoshop. You get that little zero telling you that you are about to close that path. And the reason that you want to do that is because some of the functions that Illustrator has, I'll get Photoshop out of my head one of these days. Some of the functions that Illustrator has requires a closed path. An unclosed path is like this. And the way you can tell that it's an unclosed path is because the stroke doesn't go all the way around it. There are ways to close the path, and we can go over those later, but just be able to tell the difference between a closed path and an open path. Okay. So that's how you make a line with the pen tool. Now this is a line segment tool, and this also has that little thing that sprouts it off to the side. If you want to get rid of them, you can just click that X and it goes away. This first one is just a line segment tool. You click and you draw and let go of it, and it's done. It does 2 points, and that's it. It doesn't even do a curve. You can curve it later if you want to, but the actual tool itself doesn't. Now, and you'll notice that my line is kind of crooked. If you're wanting to make something that is completely horizontal or vertical or even 45 degrees, you need to hold your shift key. I hold the shift key, and even though I'm going crazy different directions, it's snapping to 90 degrees, 0 degrees, and 45 degrees. So if if you're doing something that's pretty accurate and you don't want to have to get out a protractor or whatever it is, you can just hold down the shift key and it does the math for you. Okay. Then we have a curve tool. And this one only, it's just like the line tool, only you click, oops, cancel. You click and it makes a curve. So I don't have much of occasions to use that one. The next one is a spiral tool. And you would think that you would never use such a weird shape, but I do. It makes a really I love beautiful curvy shapes like that. So that's the shape that it makes. Now with it active with your click held, not letting go of it, but having your click held, you can use your up and down arrow keys to make it a tighter spiral in the center, or you can use your down key to make it more open. Okay. Unfortunately, once you let go of it, it's pretty much, it's not going to have that act. You can't do anything else to it. You just basically have to start over. But it's a nice curvy little shape that you might find really handy. These other two are just basically like the same thing. This one you do nice charts with, or tables. This one, I don't have any idea why you would need this, but maybe a barbecue grill. I don't know. But they're there if you have a reason to use them. They're there. And with this one and the other one, you can make more circles, fewer circles. I'm not sure if that you can change. Maybe, oh yes, with the left and right tools, you can make them have more spokes or less spokes. Okay, handy little tool. The next tool we're going to talk about is the rectangle tool. Yes, I am skipping the type tool because we have one whole class about the type tool. So the rectangle tool also has a bunch of different shapes. So I'm going to pop that one off here. So of course, this is the triangle and square one that we used to begin with. You can make the triangles and squares whatever size you want to do, or you can hold a shift key down and it's going to make it a perfect square. Now, for some reason, I work in square shapes a lot. So this is something that I do a lot. But of course, we've got, like I showed you before, we can make it into a curvy box, even to a circle. So it has a lot of things that you can do. Okay, if you click your your selection tool, just the plain old selection tool, you can hover and you can move this around to any kind of angle that you want. And you've got that angle, it's telling you what angle it is. So let's get it back to 0. Okay, so you can move it around any way you want to. This tool is ridiculous that it's still in this list, because what it is, it's a curved box. You can make squares with it and all that kind of stuff. But you can also, with your, sorry, I picked the wrong one. With your selection tool, you can make it into a circle or you can make it into a square. So those two tools do the exact same thing. So I guess maybe it's a favorite of somebody that's on the team making the changes to Illustrator.